Welcome to this talk, and we are delighted to welcome back Mr. Chess Crosby from Newfoundland in Canada. Chess, welcome back.
John, thank you. I'm delighted to be back on your platform, and we're going to discuss the release of the final report of a very historic effort on the part of Canadians, but it may be unique in the world for that matter, the National Citizens Inquiry into the effects of the governmental response to COVID-19.
Isn't there an official government inquiry into this, Chess? Why is this a duplication effort or what?
No, it seems that no government in Canada, and we have 10 provinces, several territories, and a federal government, as you and your viewers would know, no government seems to be interested in having a look back to learn lessons or to see what might be adjusted in order to make the response to any future pandemic a more seamless, flawless, and effective response. They just don't want to do it. They have no interest in it.
I must say I'm struggling with credulity here, Chess, really. We've got the Canadian government and the way it's responded. And even from a few thousand miles away, I can see there's ambiguities and questions to be asked about that. But they sort of say, well, that bit's done, walk away, let's carry on. No retrospective, no what did we get right, what did we get wrong, what can we learn for the future? None of that. I mean, is that the
That's
Canadian
not
government
the Canadian
position?
way normally. The public inquiry with an appointment of a commissioner or commissioners has historically been done for many much smaller crises that governments have had to deal with. The sinking of an oil rig, the messing up of cancer diagnosis in a hospital. A whole host of things have been the subject matter for public inquiries to learn lessons. But this gigantic assault on the rights and liberties of Canadians is a steadfast study of the governments in place right now. They are studiously avoiding any kind of look back on it. They don't want to even admit that it happened. They want people to, follow the Orwellian practice of throwing things down a memory hole.
It really is quite hard to explain. I mean, presumably they'd want to do an inquiry to exonerate themselves and show how brilliant their performance was throughout the entire pandemic.
Well, many people would suspect that even they know their performance was very poor indeed, is subject to much recrimination, and they know it too. Certainly in the public health establishment, they know that. At all manner of levels, they know that. So we issued invitation letters to 63 officials, from premiers to chief medical officers of health, to people at all levels of the public health response effort. And they simply ignored our letters to come and explain their point of view and their rationale for doing what they did to the commissioners as we traveled across the country and went to 8 different cities and locations in Canada. None of these officials bothered to enlighten the citizens of Canada under oath as to why they did what they did. This was a citizen-led and driven and funded commission of inquiry. We didn't have legal subpoena powers, but we could ask these officials to explain why they did what they did. And the only explanation most of us can come up with is they feel they can't adequately defend what they did. And they have a sense of, they want to run and hide from justifying it at this point in time. And one of the recommendations the commissioners came out with was there needs to be accountability, specifically through civil suits, but something governments themselves can do, or at least those working under the direction of governments. Criminal charges need to be laid, because we could only attempt to lay out and make findings about what the truth was in terms of the facts of the matter. What we couldn't do, because there has been no accountability, we could not do anything along the lines of reconciliation. And that's traditionally a function of inquiries. Is truth, yes, but reconciliation as well. That was not possible in this case because none of those still in authority and in power are admitting they did anything they need to reconcile about it. There has yet to be any accountability.
So we've got a legitimate movement of Canadian citizens across the country organising, and from the quality of the report that you're given, organising a large-scale inquiry. Perfectly legitimate democratic right to do that. And out of 63 officials you invited, 0 chose to take part in this inquiry. I mean, I would have thought that's bordering on the impolite.
Yeah, they think they have impunity. They don't have to explain themselves or answer anything. It also speaks to their sense of embarrassment about what they did, that they don't think they can defend themselves. Even in a sympathetic environment where citizens, it's an opportunity for them to tell citizens why they did what they did, but they're running and they're hiding.
I think most people, Chess, understand the need for this inquiry. The government didn't do it, so concerned citizens pick up the mantle. My question is, how did you determine truth? And how did you establish objectivity and the fact that you were empirically evidence-based?
Well, John, I have a background as a barrister, and so we, put in place the normal formalities about witnesses taking an oath to tell the truth and nothing but the truth. There was the opportunity for counsel, and we had counsel at all these hearings to cross-examine witnesses if they suspected that other than the truth was being told. And so did the commissioners. They asked questions frequently. And this was a chance for the citizens of Canada, including a number of eminent experts, many of whom you and your viewers would know about, Dr. Peter McCullough, for example, Dr. Malone, and many, many others, as well as Canadians that your viewers may not have heard about, but also very well qualified people, to put on the record the crushing nature of the experience of the last almost 4 years now.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So it sounds like you went to quite a lot of lengths to make sure there was good validity, internal validity. And am I right in thinking then, Chess, that the primary source of the information was multiple witnesses describing, going through their experiences?
Yes, there's also a lot of documentary evidence, as inevitably is the case, placed on the record. And these archives will be preserved, safe from those who might want to interfere with or destroy them, for historians to look at in the future. This is also an historical record. I myself believe that that's the National Citizens Inquiry in Canada, part of a process, one of the elements in a process whereby we are now arriving at a tipping point. And the truth is constantly coming out. If you wrote a book about the COVID crisis, today, in 3 months at this rate, or even less, it would probably be out of date. The revelations are coming out at a furious pace, some of which of late have involved, for example, the admitted fact, and that's extremely important because I call it a fact beyond dispute, that the vaccines have been found to contain foreign DNA, including something called SV40, which is a simian virus, which we were told, of course, all along was not there. And the reason I call it a fact beyond dispute is that the authorities themselves, like Health Canada, and you're not under the European Medicines Agency, but the regulatory authority in the UK, they all admit this now. So It's not a matter of dispute. That foreign DNA is there. What does it mean? That could be a matter of dispute. That's a matter of opinion. But if you knew that when you were being offered the injections or cajoled and exhorted to take the injections, would you have taken them? It goes to informed consent.
No, I would not. Other viewers may have done, but I would not, had I known that was there. And of course, this information and things like, you know, the gain of function and the origins of the virus now, things that were way out conspiracy theories are now, when the evidence is now accumulating, there are things that appeared ridiculous, appeared conspiratorial, have now been, as you've said, it just essentially confirmed. And I think what is happening is there's more and more evidence for more and more theories that are accumulating and are coming to light. And how would you see this tipping point working, Chess? Do you think when a sort of critical mass of the citizens see it, that they're going to demand accountability or change? Or how would you see the tipping point working?
Well, John, I think that we've seen, you know, and I'm not speaking about the contents of the report right now, but we've seen of late governments changing in various parts of the world, and governments coming into power which have a more critical point of view on the events of the last few years and of things such as the WHO power grab. So change is happening on a political level. Lawsuits are discovering the truth as well, civil lawsuits, and there will be many of them. As well, I think for true accountability, we need to have criminal prosecutions, although in Canada, that is not going to happen until the federal government changes hands. That's my opinion. It was the opinion of the commissioners of the National Citizens Inquiry that criminal prosecutions are needed as well. But the public mind has to come to the point where this is acceptable. A tipping point is not like incremental, you hit 51% and these things happen. It's like Hemingway described bankruptcy. At first slowly, then suddenly. There is a tipping point in which if you analogize it to a load of sand in a dump truck, and the dump truck is going up and up and up, little bits of sand start running out, but there comes a point where the whole load shifts. And that's what we're hitting now. And that has to happen before criminal accountability is going to take place.
Mm-hmm. So given the information given to you by so many witnesses about their personal experience, what sort of main points do you think viewers would be interested to learn that you're able to deduce from this accumulated evidence?
Well, as the report describes it, the National Citizen Inquiry Report, which you can find nationalcitizensinquiry.ca.
It'll be there, Chess, don't worry. It'll be the first thing on the description.
It's easy to find, and the method I'd recommend, and the Chief Commissioner recommends for people who might be interested in delving into it at all. It's not hard to read. It's meant for lay people to read. Have a look at, a random 3 witness testimonies, and then go to the parts of the report that deal with that, and then you'll find yourself interested in delving deeper and deeper. So I'm sorry, I might have lost the thread of the question. What was it?
I was thinking that the main points, the main findings that viewer. So yeah, we'd like viewers to download the full report, but give us a little bit of a appetizer.
Well, I think the most important one is that the injectable products have to be withdrawn from the market. That's what the commissioners recommended. And I'm bringing that up now because it's of some urgency. These products are still being urged on the population as booster shots by those in authority. And we've gone long past the point where the data can support the marketing slogan, safe and effective. This is no longer possible to say, and yet they're still saying it. How can it be safe and effective when there's foreign DNA and simian virus in this stuff? And there are other facts beyond dispute that can be added up here to say that no one would have agreed in their right mind to receive these in the first place had they known about it. So their strongest recommendation and most immediate one is withdrawal of the vaccine products in Canada.
What was the sort of overall view of the draconian lockdown strategies that were used in Canada? What did the Commission come up with on that?
We invited those in power and who were responsible to come and explain their rationale and defend that, but they wouldn't do it. So, of course, what we heard from were people who suffered profound injury, moral injury, economic injury, legal injury, losing their businesses, losing their jobs. This was an assault on society, a virtual state of terror. And when I read that in the report, I didn't read it. I didn't write it myself. The word terror, I thought, that's a strong word, but that's what it was. It was a state of terror that the state of Canada and provincial governments brought down on the heads of the population. One example, which is somewhat recent, is a lady by the name of Sheila Lewis, who was awaiting an organ transplant.
Yeah, she's in the report.
Very compelling case. And the transplant team and the medical establishment in this country, Canada, decided that despite the fact that she hadn't recovered from COVID-19, she was refusing to get vaccinated for it, and they would not give her the transplant. And she passed away as a result. That is an incredible professional cruelty on the part of a branch of the medical profession, which deserves to be roundly condemned. And those people need to account for it. But there are many, many other examples not quite so profound.
And so unscientific, because we know natural immunity is better than vaccine-induced immunity. It's just unethical, outrageous, and unscientific.
Yeah, so, there are so many things here to understand as to how we got so far off the rails from what I, and maybe perhaps most of us assumed were principles of bodily integrity and personal sovereignty and the right to informed consent and liberties that we thought were enshrined in the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms. How we seemed to abandon those in virtually in a few weeks or months, and society went virtually mad.
I know a lot of Canadians and a lot of people watching Canada from the outside are just amused by what has happened to Canada. But of course, sadly, it's not a unique situation. This is affecting other countries.
I happened to read
in the world.
A Substack article by former Time magazine journalist today, in which he referred to the demented Dominion. So our reputation internationally does not seem to be good.
Mm-hmm. So I've read this report, or big bits of it, Chess. It extends to well over 600 pages. I assume the mainstream media in Canada's been keen to pick this up, have they?
Well, that is a major problem you're putting your finger on, John, because they haven't mentioned it at all. Their strategy is to ignore it. And, the bottom line is you can't have a free country if you don't have a free press. You don't have democracy. And that's where we are right now, not just in Canada, but in other countries like the United States, like the United Kingdom, in Europe. And we're at a crisis point in history where we're either going to have a liberal democracy with constitutional rights and freedoms, or we're going to have totalitarianism. Now, that's not set out in the report, but I don't think that the commissioners would disagree, and it's my opinion.
I liked the way that there was guiding principles in this report, Chess. So independence, citizen supported, open and transparent, truthful, evidence-based and respectful. Do you feel that these principles were applied as the information was collected, as it was collated and as it was documented?
Yes, they were applied. And there's nobody who's appeared as a witness who would tell you that those principles were not applied. And they would have been applied to those in authority responsible for the pandemic measures if they had graced us with their presence. The whole exercise was designed to be a chance for Canadians to unburden themselves about their experiences of how the COVID crisis was managed. And yet that whole dimension of why it was done was not present because the people responsible refused to account for themselves.
So the opportunity that the Canadian people facilitated to have mass catharsis, closure, perhaps to some extent, was just...
It was unreciprocated,
ignored,
yes.
poo-pooed.
And you can't have closure and you can't have reconciliation when those who perpetrated what the citizens of the country believed to be an unwarranted invasion of their economic, social, political, and legal rights and freedoms refused to explain why they did it, or in any respect account for it. And this is why I think that there will eventually be criminal proceedings, because they are necessary given the enormity of what's occurred.
Do you think that some of the measures that were taken early on in the pandemic were, to a degree, justified? Because we were dealing with unknowns, there were threats. Do you think the problem perhaps is that the government and authorities didn't adapt to the changing situation as it became obvious the situation was less of an existential threat than had been thought of at first?
Well, John, you and your viewers know that there were plans in place for respiratory viral pandemics, and they were thrown out the window and not followed. Now, you can make a case for excusing that up to a point, but by the end of March, the essential facts about what the virus represented and the threat that it represented were pretty well known. There was 1,000-fold...
March 2020.
I'm sorry, what year? Yes.
March 2020.
That's right, within weeks. There's 1,000-fold difference between the threat it represented of case fatality between the young and the very old and those with comorbidities. So that should have dictated the response. And there was that old motto about, 2 weeks to slow the spread and so on. Well, after the end of that 2 weeks, we should have been able to reassess. If you want to justify that now, and I'm not sure it should be, but if you did want to justify that 2 weeks to stop the spread, then we had enough information at the end of that to know that this was not the answer, and the COVID-19 virus was not the threat to life on Earth that had been portrayed. And yet something happened that we never went back and re-examined and re-evaluated the response that was justified to a relatively minor threat that turned out to have, and was argued by many at the time, to have no greater case fatality rate than a seasonal influenza.
Given the lack of national retrospection in Canada, presumably this means that vital lessons have not been learned for future pandemics, future health emergencies, which could come. What does Canada need to do to learn from this so the same mistakes aren't made again? And is that likely to be happening?
The commissioners in the report did recommend public inquiries into aspects of this. The problem in Canada, maybe elsewhere, is that virtually every institution that we expected to defend our rights and freedoms and what we thought was normal life failed us. Virtually every institution. So you can't have that. That's in the report. That's what the citizens of Canada told us. You can't have that kind of gargantuan multi-institutional failure without deep self-reflection about what went wrong and how to make sure it doesn't happen again. Personally, I think one gargantuan inquiry like you seem to be having over in the United Kingdom is not the answer. Probably a number of investigations of different types into different institutional situations are what's warranted. Otherwise, you wander off into a monster of complexity that runs the risk that it won't be persuasive to the public and may, in fact, be co-opted by the weight of institutional opposition to what it's trying to do. So a number of different inquiries specifically targeted to particular failures. So I can give you an example, if you want, taken from the law here.
Please do.
So the doctrine of mootness, which has always been a useful doctrine, in other words, when there's no live dispute between parties in a civil case, there's good reason for courts not to occupy their time with resolving disputes that don't have any real effect on people's rights. It's called mootness. But here it was used to avoid, for the courts to avoid making a ruling on a case brought by one of the framers of our Charter of Rights, former Premier Peckford, in the federal court. And because Trudeau's government, in the wake of the demonstration in Ottawa, the Truckers' Freedom Convoy, they withdrew the requirement for vaccine mandates to be able to travel around in the country on federally regulated carriers like air and ferries. So the judge used that to say, oh, it's a moot point. So while normally, as a barrister, I'd be reluctant to think that legislatures intervening in legal doctrines like mootness is a good idea, if the courts are going to use it as an excuse not to deal with issues of extreme importance of citizens' rights and freedoms and bail out using the mootness doctrine, then I think we may have to intervene by legislation to make it harder for courts, frankly, in my opinion, to shirk their responsibilities. That's just one example, and the commissioners mentioned that in the report.
Mm-hmm. And as I say, this report is completely downloadable, eminently readable, high quality PDF. The link to download it is at the top of the description. Whether you're Canadian or not, I think you'll find that of really quite significant.
We're hoping that other countries may yet do the same, and we've been in communication with folks in other places who have the idea they may want to do something similar.
Mm-hmm. But a huge amount of work. But it's great that this group of concerned Canadian citizens has had the motivation and the volition to carry that through to this final report.
Well, John, I can tell you that back in March, before the first hearing, there was a lot of soul searching and doubt as to whether this would actually come together. Would we be able to get the money through, online funding? Would witnesses? Who knew whether this was going to work? And but we knew it had to work, and we made it work. And now it's a marker laid down in history, which I think will be viewed by historians in the future as of extreme importance.
I agree, a very important consolidation and historical document of so many people's experience. So as always, Chess, thank you for coming on. Viewers appreciate the update, and if there's any new developments, of course, do come on and keep us fully informed, and our very best wishes to you and to your wonderful
country.
I
thank you kindly on behalf of the people of Canada, John, and keep up your wonderful work, because many hundreds of thousands and millions of people see you as an honest broker of objective information. So keep it up.
We will keep trying, Chess. Thank you very much. Thank you for watching.